Chapter 3: Your Familiar Toxic Outlets. Identifying toxic relationships in dating, marriage, work, and family. What we were taught to overlook. Not all toxicity wears the same face. In fact, where it hides often determines how it hides. It disguises itself in different costumes depending on the stage it's standing on, whether that stage is a romantic dinner table, a Zoom call at work, or a family gathering over the holidays. But the damage, the confusion, the erosion of self-esteem, clarity, and safety, it's just as real, regardless of the domain. In this next chapter, I want to walk you through the 3 most common spaces where toxic dynamics thrive: dating and marriage, the workplace, and the family. And I want you to listen, not just with your ears, but with your body. Feel the tension that rises. Notice the parts of you that tighten or even want to dismiss what I'm about to say. Because those reactions, those are truth mirrors, and they deserve your attention. Dating and marriage, the illusion of intimacy. Let's begin with the place where most of us were never taught to expect harm: romantic love. You meet someone, you connect, it feels magnetic, you feel seen, chosen, maybe even healed. But slowly, subtly, something shifts. The relationship becomes confusing, one-sided, draining, and you tell yourself, it's just a phase. They're under pressure. This is what love means: compromise. But here's what I've seen over and over again. Toxic romantic relationships often thrive in the name of closeness. They weaponize your empathy. They use your heart against you. Let's unpack how this shows up. 1. Passive aggression disguised as just joking. You raise a concern, and they say, "Oh, relax, I was just joking. You're too sensitive. I didn't mean it like that." But the jokes always cut deep. They target your insecurities, your dreams, your past. They make you feel small, but in a way that's always deniable. This is not humor. This is emotional erosion wearing a clown mask, and you start shrinking to avoid being the punchline. Healthy love doesn't humiliate. It doesn't laugh at your scars, even in jest. 2. Emotional blackmail. If you loved me, you'd do this. If you cared, you wouldn't question me. Don't make me choose between you and my peace. These aren't statements. They're threats, dressed up as vulnerability. You're constantly being tested, not for compatibility, but for obedience. And the more you give in, the more you lose yourself. Real love doesn't require self-erasure. It invites mutuality, not martyrdom. If love feels like leverage, if affection is traded like currency, that's not intimacy, that's coercion. 3. Intimacy as a tool of control. Sometimes, love isn't withheld in words, but in touch. Affection becomes reward. Sex becomes manipulation. Tenderness is only shown when you conform. It's, "I'm not in the mood," or "you're too needy," or even worse, complete withdrawal after you dare to express your feelings. This isn't about desire. It's about power. They control what you crave, closeness. And in doing so, they train you like a dog, only obedient when starving. But here's what I want you to hold on to. Love is not a faucet to be turned off when you speak your truth. Love is not to be rationed as punishment. And intimacy, true intimacy, never demands your silence in return. The workplace. Power in polished packaging. Now let's shift to a space many people forget even qualifies as a relationship space: your office or place of work. Here's the truth. The workplace is one of the most underrated battlegrounds for emotional toxicity, because here, the harm rarely looks like screaming. It's not about chaos. It's about control in calm clothing. For example, 1. Subtle sabotage. Praise in public, punishment in private. You've probably seen this. Your boss or colleague sings your praises in front of a team. Couldn't have done it without you. She's amazing. He's my right-hand man. But behind closed doors, they discredit you, undermine your authority, question your decisions. Sometimes they even rewrite the narrative and take credit for your work. This is not mentorship. This is strategic manipulation. They want to keep you just motivated enough to keep serving them, but never empowered enough to leave or lead. You begin to internalize the belief that you're only valuable when they say so, that your worth depends on staying quiet, compliant, and grateful. No job is worth your dignity. No paycheck justifies gaslighting, and no title excuses emotional games. 2. Micromanaging and shifting goalposts. You do what's asked. You exceed expectations. Then suddenly, the expectations change. The project deadline moves. The standards shift. The rules evolve, always in ways that set you up to fail or question yourself. Micromanaging in toxic environments isn't about accountability. It's about insecurity disguised as leadership. It teaches you to always doubt your instincts, to triple-check every move, to live in fear of being replaced, even though you're doing everything right. Let me say this clearly. A toxic workplace trains you to confuse excellence with perfectionism and loyalty with silence. That's not leadership. That's emotional enslavement. 3. Domination, not direction. Toxic leaders don't lead. They dominate. They don't guide. They dictate. They don't inspire. They intimidate. You don't feel mentored. You feel managed. You don't feel empowered. You feel exhausted. The workplace becomes a battlefield for your sense of self-worth. You start dreading Mondays not because of the work, but because of the people. Here's your reminder. You were not hired to be humiliated. You don't have to trade your confidence for a corner office. Respect isn't a promotion. It's a basic human need. Family, the sacred mask of loyalty. And now, we enter the space most riddled with guilt, the family, the origin of our earliest beliefs, the birthplace of our love patterns, the place that was meant to be safe, but for so many of us was a training ground in tolerating pain. Let's talk about it. 1. Guilt-tripping as care. You say no, and suddenly you're ungrateful. You create boundaries, and they say, after everything I've done for you. You disagree, and they say, this is how you treat family. Guilt-tripping is the language of emotional dependence. It says, my love for you is conditional. You owe me your life. But let me offer you this. Love doesn't demand payment, and true care doesn't disguise control. 2. The entanglement. Your life is not fully yours. Entanglement is a quiet kind of prison. It says, we're so close, we don't need boundaries. It demands that your wins be shared, but your wounds be hidden. You're not allowed privacy. You're not allowed to say no. You're not allowed to become different from the system that raised you. They confuse connection with control. They mistake identity for loyalty. But your life is not a shared account. You are allowed to be whole without being tethered or entangled. 3. Forced loyalty over respect. In toxic families, loyalty becomes a weapon. Blood is thicker than water. We're all we've got. Don't air our dirty laundry. But here's what they never say out loud. I want your loyalty more than I want your healing. And that's the rub. You're forced to stay silent to keep the family name clean. You're told to forgive what was never acknowledged. You're asked to sacrifice your peace for the illusion of unity. But boundaries are not betrayal. And family, real family, doesn't demand your silence. It honors your voice. Let me close this chapter with one powerful truth. Love is not a reason to stay where you are shrinking. Commitment is not a reason to tolerate confusion, cruelty, or control. Whether it's in dating, marriage, work, or family, you are allowed to choose peace over performance, truth over tradition, healing over history. You are not disloyal for walking away. You are not selfish for reclaiming your space. You are not wrong for wanting to feel safe where you once felt silenced. Closing reflection. Take a deep breath, place your hand over your heart, and whisper this, not just to yourself, but to the younger version of you who stayed too long. I am allowed to choose differently now. Again, I am allowed to choose differently now. Because healing doesn't mean making peace with dysfunctionality. It means recognizing where it began and deciding, lovingly, courageously, not to let it continue.